Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Scotland's gender change certificate law will fail at the first hurdle. This mad law, brought in by the poisonous dwarf, was basically set up to allow deluded men the right to consider themselves as women. Unfortunately, it forces the rest of us to join in their delusion. And you can't speak against it because of the hate laws in Scotland, which means that if you even complain, you're the one going to prison. Even if that conversation is in a private house, somebody might just assume you're talking about them, and that's enough to to start a complaint with the police. It's madness. But as Orwell said, the revolution isn't complete until you control the language. But this law will fail, and rightly so. It is a direct assault on the safety of women and children, because anyone from 16 upwards in Scotland can suddenly say, I'm a woman, even with the full, all his bits dangling. That gives him the right there and then to walk into a female changing room, undress, expose himself to children, or to walk into an crisis centre, or a hostel for, women who've been very, shall we say, unfortunate in their choice of partner and have suffered for it. Man can just walk in there now, and there is nothing that anyone can say. Well done, Scotland. You have played a blinder there, haven't you? You've just ruined the safety of women and children across your entire country. Thankfully, there is sense. There is a border, and these mad, deluded, dangerous men who want to be women north of the border will suddenly come south, and then men again. Because in England, you have to have the United Kingdom Gender Recognition Certificate, which does require psychological evaluation and a diagnosis of gender dysphoria. And also, it can't happen until you're 18. And you have to live as a woman for 2 years before it exists. So these men are in for a bit of a shock, thinking they're going to go to Scotland and, hey presto, they're women. They are never, ever going to be women. They're just going to be mentally ill men with a delusional fantasy. But I'm not joining in their delusional fantasy. They're men. They've got prostates, and if I took a drop of their blood and handed it to a scientist and say, what sex is that blood? The scientist would say, male. It's as simple as that. No matter how much you pretend. Just wanting something a lot doesn't make it so. But let's look at this article and see what's going on across the border for different, shall we say, attitudes to gender recognition. Here goes. So, controversial Scottish gender certificate ruling falls at the border as transgender people set to still need a UK document to be recognised elsewhere. Yeah, the Scottish certificate means you're only a lady in Scotland. The moment you go back across the border to England, you're a man again. So Scotland approved this mad law. It's unbelievable. No, I disagree with this. It says here, Scotland approved a law to make it easier for trans people to change gender. Scotland did not approve this. The SNP and Labour and the Greens, those in power, the elite in power, approved this. I suspect if you went to the people of Scotland, they would say no. And these people in power, the SNP and the Greens and all those fellow travellers, they all know they dare not have a referendum on this subject because they know that the answer would definitely be a resounding go boil your head. People in Scotland only need to live in a chosen gender for 3 months. Government considering not accepting Scottish gender recognition certificate. That's right, it's a Scottish matter. And if you want to be a woman in Scotland, that's fine. But you're not recognised in England. It's a Scottish law, not a United Kingdom law. They would instead require the existing UK gender recognition certificate, which is, of course, harder to come by. So one has to ask why Nippy wants this pushed so hard. Why does she consider the rights of a few individuals to be worth threatening, damaging and harming women and children in Scotland? And between them, the women and children in Scotland make up a lot more, about, let's say 65-70% of the Scottish population, whereas the trans are 0.001. It's a tiny, tiny minority. But hey, it's more important that we destroy women's rights than we protect the trans. Well, here's the thing. these trans already have protection in law, and you don't. They all under the general sort of Equality Act protects them. Nobody's saying you can't put on a dress. What people are saying is you don't play sports against real women, and you don't access single sex spaces, because gender is not sex, and sex in definition should be biological sex. And if you walked into a place and say I was in a shop with my wife and she was in a changing room, and a man walks in that changing room, I will tell you now, it'll be a man that I'm punching when I walk in there to sort him out. Anyway, transgender people in Scotland may need to apply for a UK gender recognition certificate if they wish to be recognised in England and Wales. Oh, they'll be recognised. Hey, look, there's a man in a dress. Anyway, a controversial new law passed by Scottish Parliament states that people will no longer need a medical diagnosis of gender dysphoria in order to legally change their gender and be given a gender recognition certificate. I'm going to go to Scotland and I'm going to ask for, the old disabled parking badge, because obviously I don't need to have any kind of medical diagnosis of being disabled. I'll just simply identify as disabled and get my badge. Will that work? Or will that be a different thing? Is it a different form of equality? Because if you're going to have equality, equality means equality in all things. And so if someone can identify as, then I'd like to identify as. So they can identify as a woman. I'll identify as a disabled person and get that badge. It's a great thing when you're trying to park. And that seems fair. Or are we saying that certain people have more rights than others because it's a different kind of inequality? Or is it just Nicola Sturgeon wants to destroy the safety of women? That'll be it. Yeah, that's it. Anyway, it also lowers the minimum age for applicants from 18 to 16. In fact, in law, making it up to children are able to decide what they call themselves with no recourse to the parents. In Scotland, you need a parent's signature and permission to take or drop certain subjects at school, when now you can just change who you are without parental consent. Again, Nicola Sturgeon, it's the P's in the SNP, isn't it? Going after the children, because that's all they care about. They target children every time. The SNP are P's, every single one of them. It also drops the amount of time required for an applicant to live in their acquired gender for 2 years to 3 months. And it's not an acquired gender, it's a delusional obsession and a paraphilia. It's not that they're any different, it's just they just fancy wearing a dress because they want to feel special, because they're in no way otherwise special. But the UK government sources told the Times that if a medical diagnosis of gender dysphoria is not required, then Scotland would no longer be recognised by the rest of the UK as having a rigorous process for changing gender. And a consequence of this would mean that the people issued with a Scottish GRC would also have to apply for a UK certificate for it to be recognised south of the border. Quite right too. The UK government currently, and in fact I would also go so far as to say that you don't get a change of gender certificate or any kind of legal acknowledgement until you're post-op. If you still have the necessary bits, if you like, that you are a woman or a child, because let's face it, a lot of them do, then you are still a man. Until you are post-op, until you've had them off, you should not have a GRC. And indeed, even once you've had them off, you still are a man. You're just a man with nothing, because you'll have had male puberty, your male strength. And don't give me all that bullshit about, reduced testosterone. That's immaterial. You've still got the male musculature. It's bollocks. Unlike what you've got. Anyway, the UK government currently has a list of countries whose GRCs meet sufficient checks and balances for people who want to change their legal gender. Certificates from countries on the list are automatically recognised in the UK, but those not on the list have to apply for a UK certificate. Equalities Minister Kemi Badenoch launched a review to update the list following the Scottish Parliament's passing the Gender Bill last month. A UK government source told The Times this is just a procedural change, and it was envisaged in 2004 Act. It is not a new measure. It was also done in 2011, and we're updating it for 2023. We're not discriminating, they continued. We're not discriminating against people from foreign countries with GRCs. If they arrive in this country with one from a country that has a less rigorous system than the UK, we're saying you should apply for a UK GRC, which is readily available. In 2011, Montenegro and Latvia were removed from the list of approved countries. And basically, they let people just change their gender far too easily, and therefore it was not recognised. And so you have to come over here, and then once you're here, you have to apply for this, which means click, the clock starts, and you have to start from day one and live for 2 years. You have to obtain medical write-up to say that you are gender dysphoric, that sort of thing. It follows fears of gender tourism to Scotland from other parts of the UK where the law has not been changed. No, that's fine. If anyone in England or Wales or Northern Ireland wants to go to Scotland and be a lady, they can go to Scotland and be a lady all they like. They have to stay in Scotland though, and that's fine. A bit cold, so wear tights, love. Those winds will get up there and tickle your balls no time. Anyway, it's been suggested that a male-born transgender woman could travel to Scotland to have their gender legally changed, then use the new official status to access female-only spaces in other nations. And that's quite wrong. No one with balls or a penis attached should ever have access to a female-only facility. It is believed that the legislation could make intimate same-sex care more difficult to guarantee. Again, you're in hospital, you're a woman in hospital, you're vulnerable. Let's say you've previously had an experience, an unpleasant experience with a man, if you know what I mean, the R. You request and demand same-sex treatment. I can only have a woman treat me. They can send a man to you, and he could be a full, intact man with a bulge. And there's nothing you can do about it. You could be traumatized emotionally because of what's happened to you previously, and they could put a man onto, who may do an intimate care. You might have something that's, that requires, let me say, intimate care, and you demand that woman, and it could be a man giving it to you, because these people don't give a shit. In fact, they would probably ensure and make sure that it was a man to show their virtuous credentials. Oh yes, well he's a woman now. No, he's a man and always will be. And again, if it was my wife, I tell you, that man would be on the floor because I'll have knocked him out. In single-sex schools where policies on gender are decided independently, there are fears that they will be pressured to amend their admission rules. The age clauses of the legislation, allowing people to change gender from 16 to 18, means that more sixth formers could legally change their gender and request a place at a single-sex school. And again, the simplest way out of that is that if for example, any parent who puts their child to an all-girls school, and a boy turns up pretending to be a girl, every parent of those girls takes their children out. Every single one. So that boy's walking through that school and he'll be alone. And all those teachers are going, where is everybody? And they're all going, well, this is a girls' school and you've got a boy in there. End of story. Let me tell you, they started doing that boy will be out the next day. Government sources have previously told the Times they feared the new law could be used to allow biologically male Scottish prisoners in English jails to demand to be placed in women's prisons. I'd like to see the corollary of that. I'd like to see a woman who then goes, oh, I'm a man now, who commits a crime, to be put in a male prison. Because I can guarantee the moment that likelihood, I'm going into a male prison with my vagina, you can guarantee all of a sudden, oh my God, I'm a woman again, quick as you damn well like. That would happen. Anyway, the government may now be gearing up to block the legislation from being enshrined into law. And under the Scotland Act, the UK government can challenge devolved legislation if it feels it impacts on national security or reserved matters. Of course they have to refuse it, because this is such a damaging law that harms women directly. Everybody knew in advance this would harm women, and the SNP have once again shown they have zero care for women. Anyway, I'm going to finish here, round up and come up and end this video, but it is appalling. It won't be long, a few days or a matter of a few weeks perhaps, and there'll be an article in the paper showing a strange man in ladies' clothing crying at the border because I was a woman north of it and now I'm a man again. They don't recognise me as a woman. And that's because you got yourself a foreign law. And what is recognised north of the border is not recognised in England. And you can, if you want the English one, go and get yourself a UK gender change certificate. It's absolutely fine. It'll take you a long time, and you'll have to submit to psychological testing, of course. But all that'll do is prove that you either are or aren't what you say you are. Not that you ever will be, because whatever you say you are, you aren't. You say you're a woman, but you're a man. But you say you're gender dysphoric. But in England, you have to prove that. And that is why you have to have this medical examination. Whereas in Scotland, you just simply turn up and say, oh, I want access to ladies' changing rooms now. And they give it to you. But the irony here is that Nippy will be complaining about this. Now, she wants an independent Scotland. Oh, I want independent Scotland, she said. I want independent laws, independent tax raising powers. I want independent this. Everything has got to be independent. So she's got this independent law that she says, oh, this is the law of Scotland. And because the law is different in England, she's complaining about it. But you're the one who wanted these laws to be Scottish laws. Well, that's just Scottish law. It's not, by definition, English law. You are the one who wanted the laws to be different, and they are. You've got what you wanted. But now you're saying that England needs to change to Scottish law. No, I'll tell you what's easier. Scotland changes to English law. In fact, wouldn't it be easier, Nicola, now that you've fucked up the Scottish education system, and the health system, and the legal system, and the protection of women, and the protection of children, and now you're absolutely damaging women and children with these laws. You've screwed the economy. You're screwing up everything you touch. Wouldn't it be better for Scotland, and much better for the Scottish people, if, say, the Scottish Parliament was disbanded, and that Scottish legal system was absorbed into the British legal system, and that the Scottish education system was absorbed into the British education system, and that Scottish NHS became part of the NHS, and so forth. And that would stop mad extremists and hate-filled bigots like Nicola Sturgeon from getting her grubby little paws on anything and destroying it. And the people of Scotland are seeing this with their own eyes. They can't get a doctor. They can't get their child a job because there's no jobs there. The education system is suffering. Everything is going downhill. And she is stamping her tiny dwarf feet and saying it's all the fault of the English. Rubbish. It's all the fault of Nicola Sturgeon. The Empress herself has caused each and every problem that Scotland has today. But this one law is the one law that's been passed that everyone said in advance would directly harm women and children. And she still pushed it. Thank you very much for listening. If you like what you hear and see on the channel, please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. It's the one down there. Go for it. Ring the bell for notifications of future output. Leave a like, leave a comment. Definitely share the video. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, make sure you know which side of the border you need to be on, and goodbye.